Um, so crime trends are something if listed in the course catalog as something we're supposed to be talking about. What's kind of interesting is that it's probably one of the things that maybe gets most talked about in like popular pundits and stuff, like oh, crimes down. And there's all these discussions about it, but it's one of the things that maybe we know the least about. It's one of the things that maybe is really kind of bizarre to talk about, but it's one of the more understudied ideas. How do we explain trends in crime? Crime going up or down over time. But it's important when we think about crime trends to think about the relative nature of crime trends. It's all a matter of perspective. But I want to point this out. You might know already. Yeah, what are the correct perspective? Look at the one that is. It's not. There we go. You probably know this already. But in case you don't know this already, we are living in the same time. And that's another thing. Maybe it doesn't go that way from time. You get to be your dad, what I realized. But besides that, we are living in the safest time in human history. Doesn't mean all of us are not can't be victims or anything like that. That's not what that means. So what this does mean though is that the amount of crime out there is simply the lowest than basically since the dawn of mankind. Whatever that is, right? So here is a book came out a few years ago called Enlightenment Now, scientific thinker who's a Harvard psychologist, but he's also really into issues of crime and social order. And so he collected data and talking about basically the book is good. The book is about a lot of things. But one of the things to think about is for human progress. It's optimistic, optimistic about human progress and how by sort of reorienting how we think about identifying how we solve them, we have solved a lot. For example, like absolute poverty, globally speaking, is an all-time low. Starvation at all. And crime is also an all. When we're talking about crime trends, historically, we're talking about really minute changes, this massive trend that again we should keep in the back of our mind. Like we complain a lot, I don't think we complain about everything. But one thing we maybe shouldn't necessarily complain about is how safe or unsafe we currently are, like in our generation. Since we've never been safer. However, that is not all that we need to understand crime and forensic crime in the United States in order to kind of understand what crime is and how it's better in it and how it's related to other kinds of social factors, how different things can impart different effects at different times. It helps us get a more comprehensive understanding of the phenomenon. We really had, despite Stephen Baker had it did right. But we've begun systematic data collection efforts about crime, crime scenes and policing since the 1940s. And you probably know this. So the United States, globally speaking, has the best data on crime. Like the issue is that the United States knows more about its own crime issues than any other country by a country. Okay? This really began in the 1940s. So we know a lot about crime and collecting information about systematically since after World War II. So this is basically the bird's eye view of what's happened crime since that. Crime declined in the immediate aftermath of World War II. It increased in the 1960s and then it increased in the 1970s. During the 1970s, also in particular, there was quite a bit of social unrest, obviously. There was also a profound distrust in government. If you ever watch a movie in the 1970s that's about like police or about crime, like Dirty Harry, Bullet, there was all Bullet, even whatever the thing is. So there's so many movies that came out around the conversations into that. There's so many people. Death Wish, obviously Death Wish. Charles Bronson. They're all about basically police fail, the government fails, and there's kind of this anxiety that we probably didn't personally experience. But was very much pervasive in 1970. It co-occurred along with further increases in violent property crime that began in the 1960s. It further increased into the 1980s, mostly associated with like the crime like drug-related issues. So there was a slight increase in crime that was related to drugs, but it sort of expanded out from drugs like homicide. So it wasn't necessarily by the late 1980s crime rate had sort of stabilized, and people weren't really sure what was going to happen. However, there were important figures in criminology who anticipated that crime was going to spike dramatically. And the argument was the baby boomers, kids, were coming of age around. And because the proportion of people who were engaged in serious crime was being very small, when the age cohort increased, happened with what was expected was that the crime rate was also going to increase because a small proportion of individuals who were involved in serious crime was completely bigger. It's going to be more kids who are hitting the peak of the age crime curve at exactly the same. But um, starting in specifically something like 1993 or 1994, there was this really precipitous drop in crime. It was really unexpected. Scary. Baby boomers kids are coming of age all around the same time. We're supposed to see this like massive increase in the amount of crime that happens, but that's not what happened at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. What's happened since then is crime has continued to, and only in the past like couple of years have there been like kind of stability, maybe slight increases in second. But this really important phenomenon, the decline of crime drop, is a really unexpected and consulted phenomenon. Right at that. Predicting the future, just like Gather demonstrated for us about the future data, right? Predicting the future are kind of really, really difficult. So this is from the data for crime notice to police. They're not necessarily crimes that lead to arrest. In fact, most crime does not lead to arrest. These are crimes notice to police that are reported about this. And police have reported in past. So it's not the total amount of crime. I did not call the police when I got first months. Which, maybe I was a colleague, maybe laughing at me. So there's a lot of crime that's not called the dark figure. But this is what the if you look at victimization rates, including victimization that's not that can kind of occur. And when we look for less rate, you can see that the exact same drop occurred across the group. So this is a fact that we're doing. That's to talk about the most privileged population. So crime dropped precipitously in the 1990s, and we're interested in why. And we don't totally know. But here's something I wanted to mention, and maybe it's something that I like hinted at before, but I have this whole rant, and I don't want to subject you to the entire rant. I'll give you a little taste. So, yeah, I'll do it now. Sure, why not? So, science is hard. Doing careful science is really hard. One of the reasons that science is hard is because it takes time. It takes time to do analysis correctly. It takes time to collect data that are high quality. And even if you have existing data, sort of making sure that you're analyzing it properly simply takes time. I've done this for a very long time. What we saw in the immediate aftermath of COVID was a bunch of science happening. A lot of that science is nonsense. And that's probably, and I knew this at the time, and I will be, because there's so much garbage, by the way, there's so much garbage medical science out there, you have no idea. I don't even know what it's saying. I've read some books on this, really important ones called Science Fictions by Stuart Ritchie, who was uh, University of the UK. It'll blow your mind, about that. Because it's like really sus. It is sus. The amount of time is including in fields like medicine. So with that in mind, like we are now 30 years out getting a good picture as to why the crime dropped. 30 years later, we're still finding out new things about why this trend that isn't that weird? So how are we supposed to know exactly what's happening that like the new version is like, well, and there's something to keep in mind, but there are things with information structure like stands for area that takes time, but seems it looks really cool and tiny. So that's sort of thing. Gets to maybe more. That's in general. Be suspicious of science because a lot of it is sketchy. A lot of science. We try to like filter out bad stuff on your behalf, but a lot of it. Okay. So there are a lot of different potential explanations why the crime dropped in 1990. Again, this really, just like all science, is really difficult to do. It's really difficult to assess exactly why this happened, to examine different possible alternative explanations. A couple of reasons why this happened. One, we talked briefly about experiments before. Experiments are, when they're done properly, are the gold standard of science because you can rule out spurious, you can rule out alternative explanations. But we're not talking about experiments, we're talking about things that in the past, so it's obviously not experimental by definition. So we have to, just like in our field oftentimes generally, we're not able to do experiments. You looking at different potential causal effects and ruling out alternative explanations. The units of analysis can be a little bit complicated. Are we talking about cities? Are we talking about cities? Are we talking about countries? That can be quite difficult to solve. Sense exactly how different related at different times. Getting again a good overall picture as to why trends in crime on the very particular is. I like to point out as well that a few studies, there are a few big ones, and mostly where I'm getting information. But a few studies are able to basically satisfactorily be able to rule out alternative explanations. We have to compare multiple factors simultaneously and rule out alternative factors. Few studies are able to do this and have been able to do this satisfactorily as maybe we might want. Despite all of these problems, however, it does seem like there are some things that do matter. There are some factors that do seem to matter with regard to the 1990 climate level. We're going to talk about them for there are others we could talk about. I will note, for example, there's a lot of discussion of the role of policing in the 1990s. Depending on whom you will get different answers on this. My own take, which is, I guess, the take that you take for this class. My take is that the evidence on the effect of policing and policing strategies on the crime drop are equivocal. They're not all that strong. Different types of policing were tried in different places, different times of things. It doesn't seem like, based on my reading of the literature, different people have different views. My reading of the literature does not suggest that policing changes had a huge effect on the crime drop, especially